Early morning, February 1st, 1944, near Italy, Private First Class Alton. W lay alone atop a small exposed knoll, from positions 85 to 120 wide away. 3 German MG42 machine guns were firing simultaneously. Before his eyes, his entire platoon was being torn to pieces, bullets skimmed low. Kicking up dirt, the Browning automatic rifle in his hands weighed 11 fully loaded, and his magazine held only 20 rounds. A crack was embedded in the wooden stock, a 7.92 bullet that should have pierced his skull had instead grazed the wood, according to the infantry field manual. At this moment he should have sought cover, kept a low profile, and retreated immediately, but did not. Instead, he crawled to the most conspicuous, deadliest position on the entire battlefield and held his ground. There, unmoving for a full 90 minutes, by 2:00 p.m. that afternoon, this 20-year-old deer hunter from Spring Mount, Pennsylvania, who had never before had a confirmed kill, had inflicted at least 60 German casualties, shattering a counterattack that could have completely flattened the American beachhead. The tactic he used was simple to the point of brutality. If you want to understand how a country deer hunter used the mindset of ambushing bucks in the Pennsylvania woods to kill 60 trained German soldiers, you must first see clearly what he saw that morning. The entire battlefield. Alton Warren was born on December 31st, 1923 in Spring Mount, Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. It was a rural area. His father worked in a factory and his mother managed the household. Alton grew up hunting for sport, tracking white-tailed deer in the woods around Spring Mount from the age of 12. His most proficient hunting technique was the high ambush, setting up or ground blinded position higher than the deer trail. This concealed a simple tactical logic. Height determines field of view. Deer move on the ground and rarely look up. The hunter lies in wait, overlooking the entire hunting ground, controlling every move of the prey. Patience is the core of this technique. Sitting motionless for 6 hours, never acting rashly, one shot to hit, taking only one deer. Ammunition was expensive. The cartridges for his father's Winchester .3 rifle cost good money and could not be wasted. The hunter must wait for the perfect moment, aim, and then pull the trigger. Reading the terrain was a fundamental skill. Before climbing the Alton would survey the entire forest. Where would the herd pass? Which paths did they frequent? Where were the feeding grounds? The position of the had to be chosen at the optimal point to monitor all prey movements. Hunter always controlled the initiative of the hunt. Before the war, Alton worked at a brick factory in Spring Mount, carrying 50 bricks for 10 hours a day. This hard labor forged strong muscles and amazing endurance, but what truly allowed him to escape death in the Battle of Anzio was the instinct honed during his hunting life. In March 1943, 16 months after Pearl Harbor, Alton was drafted into the Army. Under the Selective Training and Service Act, he did not enlist voluntarily. Army sent him to Fort Meade, Maryland for basic training, where he first encountered the M1 rifle fed by an 8-round clip semi-automatic weighing 4.3, shortly after he was assigned as a Browning automatic rifleman. This M1918A2 Browning automatic rifle, bar for short, was a squad automatic weapon. Fully loaded, it weighed 11, more than double though, with a magazine capacity of 20 rounds, far exceeding this 8. The bar had 2 fire rate modes: slow 300, 450 rounds per minute, and fast 500, 650 rounds per minute, firing the same 36 Springfield cartridge as although the bar was heavier and slower to reload, it provided suppressive fire that could not match. The infantry field manual repeatedly emphasized use cover, keep a low profile, conserve ammunition. Alton took these rules to heart, but hunting had taught him another set of survival laws: seize the high ground, expand your field of view, control the battlefield. In September 1943, the U.S. 3rd Infantry Division, known as the Rock of the, set out for the Italian theater. Alton was assigned to Company C, 30th Infantry Regiment, participating in Operation Avalanche and landing at over. The next 4 months, they fought across the river, advanced step by step toward Monte Cassino, and reached Anzio after a bloody campaign. Alton always performed his duties faithfully, charging with the BR, firing on command, keeping his head down at all times. His comrades gave him the nickname Nappy. He was unremarkable, had never received any medals or commendations, and had never been singled out by superiors for bravery. He was just an ordinary rifleman in a rifle company. On January 22, 1944, Operation Shingle began. Allied forces landed at Anzio in 50 south of Rome, aiming to outflank the German line and open the road to Rome. The landing achieved surprise, catching the Germans, but the American commander, Major General John P. hesitated. He did not order an immediate advance on Rome, choosing instead to consolidate the beachhead. This fatal hesitation gave German Field Marshal Albert time to mobilize troops. Within a mere 48 hours, elite German units had surrounded the beachhead, including the Hermann Göring Panzer Division and the 3rd Grenadier Division. By January 30th, the Allies had been compressed into a narrow strip 15 deep and 25 wide, and the Germans immediately launched a counterattack, attempting to drive the Allies back into the sea. From January 30th to 31, the battle broke out. U.S. Ranger units attempted to break through the German lines and seize the strategic town of Latina 15 inland, but suffered a disastrous defeat. Darby's Rangers were encircled by the Germans with 761 killed or captured. The 3rd Infantry Division tried its best but could not break through the encirclement to effect a rescue. By February 1st, the Germans were preparing a massive counterattack, planning to split the Allied beachhead in two and destroy the pockets one by one. On the night of January 31st, Company C received orders, before the expected counterattack began, send a patrol to scout German positions near Alton. Prepared 6 magazines for his BR, totaling 120 rounds. At 11:30 a.m. on February 1st, 1944, the patrol moved out. Company C moved in a dispersed formation across the open farmland near with 30 to 40 soldiers advancing slowly. The land was flat and open in the harvested wheat fields. Only 10 to 15 of stubble remained. There were no trees, almost no cover, only a few shallow depressions in the ground, the deepest no more than 30. It was February in central Italy. The ground was, and the temperature was about 5°C. The patrol's mission was simple and clear: advance 300 m, identify the German positions, and then retreat. Alton walked on the right flank of the formation, gripping his bar, his hunter's eyes scanning the wilderness vigilantly. An ominous feeling welled up. This field was too empty. Where were the Germans? At 11:45 a.m., the first MG42 machine gun suddenly opened fire. The sound was highly distinctive, like a high-speed chainsaw cutting wood, sharp and with a fire rate of up to 200 rounds per minute. The German machine gun spat tongues of fire from a camouflaged position ahead. The first burst instantly killed 3 American soldiers. The remaining members of the patrol scrambled to drop and seek cover, but the so-called cover was nothing more than shallow pits that barely concealed their bodies. Immediately after, a second MG42 on the left opened fire, followed by a third on the right joining the fray. The patrol was caught in a perfect crossfire net, unable to advance or retreat, unable to move. Any slight movement would invite a hail of bullets. The second lieutenant shouted orders hoarsely, but no one could move a step. The 3 MG42s fired alternately, spraying for 5 to 7 seconds, pausing 3 to 4 seconds to change barrels or reload, then firing again. Continuous suppressive fire left the Americans breathless. Within the first 15 minutes, another 5 soldiers were hit. One soldier tried to crawl toward the wounded, but MG42 bullets whistled in. Immediately, he could only scramble back. The patrol was completely paralyzed. From 11:45 a.m. to 12:00 p.m., a full 15 minutes of desperate stalemate ensued. Alton lay in a shallow pit, BR muzzle pointing forward. He scrutinized the battlefield as if surveying a hunting ground. Although the MG42 positions could not be seen directly, they could not escape his eyes. The first machine gun nest was 85 wide ahead, muzzle flash and smoke betraying its location. The second was 100 yards to the left, where he could see the trajectory of the barrel turning. The third was 120 yards to the right, audible but invisible. All 3 nests were set in low-lying areas or behind sandbag bunkers almost level with the ground. From a prone position, Alton could barely see them, but 60 yards in front of him, there was a small knoll rising 2 to 3 meters above the surrounding fields. It was the only high ground in this wilderness, offering a 360 view with no obstructions, but also no cover, completely exposed to German fire. Yet once it topped that knoll, he would have the entire battlefield in view. A hunter's thought of ambushing prey took shape in his mind. Standing on that knoll, I can see their positions. They will see me, but I will see them more clearly. I will be the deer and let them become the hunters. As long as their guns are aimed at me, my comrades can be saved. Alton turned to the Soldier beside him and said, "I'm going to that knoll." The soldier's eyes went wide and he shouted in disbelief, "You're crazy. You'll be cut to ribbons in 10 seconds. Alton replied, "If they're staring at me, they can't worry about the others." Nappy, don't go, but Alton had already started crawling forward. The lieutenant was 20 m away and didn't notice his action at all. He didn't ask for permission, didn't wait for orders. He chose to improvise. At 12:05 p.m., Alton crawled toward the knoll 60 wide away. He dragged the 11 bar with his right hand, elbows propping up the ground, struggling forward through the wheat stubble. The earth cut his palms. MG42 bullets whistled overhead. The Germans hadn't spotted him yet, their attention entirely on the pinned-down main body of the Americans. Alton crawled past the body of an American soldier lying face down in the dirt, blood frozen. He didn't pause for a moment. A burst of MG42 bullets swept past him, dirt splashing 2 m to his left. Alton froze instantly, motionless. After 10 seconds, the machine gun stopped. The Germans were reloading. He continued to crawl forward. 30-yard, 40y, 50y. The Germans still hadn't noticed. His movements were slow and concealed, keeping his profile low. The Germans' attention was all on those bigger threats. Reaching the 50-yard mark, he arrived at the base of the knoll. Ground beneath his feet began to slope upward, just a few final steps. Alton scrambled up the last 2 to 3 m of the slope using hands and feet, finally reaching the top of the knoll. His position was now a cut above the surrounding fields. At this moment, if the Germans looked up, he was dead for sure, but the Germans didn't. They were still firing madly at the trapped American platoon. Alton lay atop the knoll bar, muzzle pointing forward. From this position, the entire open ground was fully visible, and he saw all his targets clearly. Machine gun nest number 185 wide away. 3 Germans, the MG42 mounted on a tripod with low sandbags for cover in front. Nest number 2, 100 wide to the left. 2 Germans clearly visible, 1 loading, 1 pulling the trigger. Nest number 3, 120 wide to the right, only the barrel exposed, the position extremely well camouflaged. Behind him, 30 American soldiers, pinned down on a 150 m wide line, unable to move. Alton quickly made a tactical decision, neutralize the nearest target first. Nest number 1 at 85 wide. He switched the BR's fire rate to slow mode, 300-450 rounds per minute. This mode, shooting was more accurate and ammo consumption lower. At 12:10 p.m., Alton aimed at the gunner of nest number 1, steadied his breathing, held his breath, and slowly pulled the trigger. The bay fired 4 rounds in 1 second. Thud, 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 thud. The German gunner fell backward in response. The loader turned to check the situation. Alton fired again, sending 3 bullets out. The second German also slumped to the ground. The third German, terrified, turned and ran. MG42 number 1 was completely silenced. Germans in other positions heard the shots and immediately began searching for the source. 5 seconds later, they discovered Alton on the knoll. The remaining 2 machine gun nests immediately swiveled their barrels and bullets poured down like a rainstorm. The 7.92 bullets sliced through the air at supersonic speeds, screaming past him. Bullets hit the ground beside him, splashing dirt and sending gravel flying. 1 bullet grazed 6 in above his head. Another pierced his sleeve, tearing the fabric but missing the skin. A third bullet hit the bar's wooden stock, chiseling a deep crack into it. Alton quickly rolled 2 m to the right, changing his firing position. Movement is survival, a lesson learned while hunting deer can easily spot stationary objects. The German guns would aim at his previous location, not his current hiding place. Even moving just 1 or 2 meters was enough to change his fate. At 12:12 p.m., 2 German approached from the left. They used leapfrog tactics, sprinting 5 to 10 m in a crouch, then dropping prone, then continuing. They were Panzer, each carrying 3 to 4 stick grenades. Their goal clear: flank the knoll, get close, and throw grenades to kill Alton. The distance closed, 40 yard, 30 wide, 25 wide. Alton steered targets through his sights but held his fire. The hunter's patience was fully displayed at this moment. Wait for the best shooting opportunity, never fire hastily. Let the prey get a little closer. 20 yards, the distance was just right. Alton fired a burst of 6 rounds. The first grenadier was hit in the chest and fell instantly. The second grenadier hurriedly raised his hand, attempting to throw a grenade. Alton pulled the trigger again, firing 4 rounds. The second grenadier also fell. The grenade slipped from his hand, exploded 15 m away, its blast completely failing to reach the knoll. 2 more Germans dead. At 12:20 p.m., machine gun nest number 2, 100 yards to the left, was still. Resisting stubbornly, the gunner sweeping the knoll continuously, Alton switched the bar to fast fire. Mode 500, 650 rounds per minute, at a longer range, stronger suppressive fire. Was needed. Within 1.5 seconds he fired 10 rounds. Every fifth round was a tracer. The phosphorus tips dragged bright trails pointing straight at the German position. His goal was not to kill but to suppress, forcing the German gunner to duck into cover. The sound of the MG42 ceased temporarily as expected. The Germans shrank behind the sandbags. Alton immediately fired a second burst, 8 rounds whistling. Out he saw a German fall backward. The MG42 tried to fire again, but the crew was already in chaos with only one man barely operating it. Alton fired a third burst, sending 6 rounds out. MG42 number 2 fell completely silent. Of the 3 machine gun nests, 2 had been eliminated. By this point, the German casualties caused by Alton were estimated at 8 to 10 men. At 12:25 p.m., Alton checked his magazine. Only 3 rounds remained. There were 2 magazines left on his belt, totaling 40 rounds. His total ammunition on hand was only 43 rounds, yet nest number 3 on the right was still firing, and there were an unknown number of German infantry supporting on the flank. Ammo was running out, and the BR's barrel was scorching hot. In just 15 minutes he had fired about 150 to 200 rounds. Unlike the water-cooled M1917 heavy machine gun, continuous firing of the BR could easily lead to an overheated and ruined barrel. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline rush and the muscle strain of controlling an 11 weapon. The bar's recoil made his shoulder ache. His lips were cracked and peeling, and his canteen was left in the pack at the rear. He hadn't had time to bring it when he set out. Alton spat to moisten his lips. His mouth was full of the metallic, bitter taste of gunpowder and dirt. At 12:30 p.m., a new threat appeared. Alton saw 20 to 30 German soldiers surging from the rear. This was a German assault platoon aiming to take the knoll. They advanced in a staggered formation using leapfrog tactics. Half the men charged 10 to 15 m, stopped to provide cover fire, while the other half followed up. Standard infantry tactics, methodical and orderly. The distance shortened constantly. 150 yard, 120 wide, 100 yard. Alton made a snap decision. Ignore machine gun nest number 3. At 120 yard, the bar would struggle to pose an effective threat to a fortified position. Priority: neutralize the infantry. They were closer and a more urgent threat. At 100 wide, Alton opened fire. Rate of fire set to fast mode. He used short bursts to conserve ammo. 4 rounds. Shift aim. Another 4 rounds. Shift again, aiming exclusively at exposed targets, never wasting bullets. On shots without certainty, German soldiers fell in groups. The first soldier took a hit to the chest and fell straight to the ground. The second was hit in the leg, screaming and curling into a ball. The third, fourth, fifth. In just 30 seconds, 5 to 6 Germans were down. The remaining Germans hurriedly sought cover, either jumping into shell craters or hiding behind the bodies of their comrades. At 80 yards, Alton continued firing. Any German head that popped up invited a 3 to 4 round burst. A German just raised his head to observe. A burst came and he fell. Another tried to crawl forward, unable to escape death. Another 4 to 5 Germans killed, facing dense fire from the high ground. This assault platoon could not move an inch. A German officer shouted orders loudly. Identified later as German, ordering a temporary retreat. The assault platoon in disarray. In this engagement, German casualties were estimated at 10 to 12 men. Alton remained on the knoll unscathed. At 12:40 p.m., Alton pulled the trigger. Click, the magazine was empty. He quickly swapped in his last magazine. Only 20 rounds left. This was everything he had. To the right, 120 wide away, machine gun nest number 3 was still firing. Bullets constantly landing around the knoll. 1 bullet struck 6. To his left, the shockwave making his eardrums ring. A scene later written into his official Medal of Honor. Citation: another bullet hit the sending wood chips flying, yet another cut his sleeve, still without drawing blood. With only 20 rounds left, nest number 3 was still resisting, and the Germans could launch a new charge at any moment. I need more ammo now. Alton's gaze fell 15 yards down the knoll, exactly where the dead American soldier he had crawled past earlier lay. The man had an M1 Grand rifle and of ammunition on him. He faced a choice: crawl down the knoll, exposing himself to German fire to snatch ammo, Or stay put and run out of bullets when the Germans charged. Rather than sit and wait for death, better to take a risk. At 12:43 p.m., Alton began crawling toward the body. The German MG42 gunner immediately spotted his movement. Bullets swept in like rain, dirt exploding beside him, halfway there. German grenade exploded 5 m to his right, the shock wave slamming dirt into his face, but he didn't flinch, the 15 wide. Distance felt like the boundary between life and death. He finally reached the body, flipped it over, and felt for BR. Magazines, none found. This soldier used an M1 carrying 8-round clips. Not the BA's 20-round magazines. Fortunately, both used the same 3006 rifle cartridge. He had to manually load the bullets from the grand clips one by one into the empty BR magazine, all under German fire. Alton unhooked the from the body. It held 6 grand clips, 48 rounds in total. MG42 fire grew denser, bullets punching small holes in the ground around him. His hands shook violently from the adrenaline spike. He grabbed the first clip, dumped the 8 rounds into his palm, picked up an empty BR magazine and began loading one by one. 1 round. 2 rounds, 3 rounds, 8 rounds. He grabbed the second clip. Continued 9 rounds, 16 rounds. His hands were shaking too badly, he simply couldn't fill it to 20. 16 rounds would have to do. Alton cursed, stuffed the remaining clips into his pocket. About 32 rounds left, dragged the magazine loaded with 16 rounds and crawled desperately back to the top of the knoll. At 12:46 p.m., Alton returned to the knoll, 16 rounds in the mag, 32 loose rounds in his pocket, total 48 rounds. He had the strength to fight again. From 1:00 p.m. to 2 p.m., the battlefield fell into a brutal seesaw battle. The Germans launched flanking maneuvers time and again. Alton repelled them time and again with precise bursts. Every 15 to 20 minutes, the Germans would launch an attack, yet they could never get within a step of the knoll. At 1:20 p.m., machine gun nest number 3 on the right finally went silent. The German crew either fled in panic or were all killed. The war records are not explicit. During this time, Alton reloaded his BR magazine from clips 3 more times. Each reload took 2 to 3 minutes, extremely dangerous. Completely exposed to German fire, but he had no choice. Over 2 hours, the total number of bullets he fired was approximately 200 to 250. He had long lost count of how many Germans he had killed. Only one thought remained in his mind: survive, hold the position. At 2 p.m. exactly, the American platoon, trapped for over 2 hours, was finally able to move, with all 3 MG42 nests silenced. The soldiers either advanced to consolidate positions or pulled back to evacuate the wounded. An officer, likely that second lieutenant, shouted toward the knoll, "Nappy, come down." Alton fired his last few rounds, then crawled down the knoll and walked toward the American lines. His uniform had 3 bullet holes, the bar stock was full of cracks, and the barrel was still scorching hot. His comrades looked at him in total silence. Someone murmured, "He held off 2 hours of them all by himself." Alton said nothing, exhaustion washing over him like a tide. A medic came up to check his injuries, and the result was unbelievable. He was unscathed, without even a scratch. Was it a miracle? Was it luck? Or did his ceaseless movement save him? No one could give an answer. A few days later, intelligence officers returned to the battlefield near the knoll to count German bodies. In front of the knoll lay about 20 to 25 German corpses, around the machine gun nests. And along the attack routes, there were about 35 to 40 bodies, plus signs of many German wounded having been evacuated. It was confirmed that Alton had caused approximately 60 German casualties, including those killed in action and the seriously wounded who were evacuated. These casualties were distributed almost entirely within a 180 fan-shaped area in front of the knoll. 3 dead at 1, 2, 2. 4 dead at 2, 2 dead on the spot, 10 to 12 casualties in the assault platoon, and 20 to 30 casualties from other scattered skirmishes. Major General, commander of the 3rd Infantry Division, called Alton a one-man army, and the report recommending him for the Medal of Honor was rushed up the chain of command from February to May 1944. After the Battle of Anzio ended, Alton continued to fight with the army. The 3rd Infantry Division struggled to break the siege of the beachhead. On May 23, Operation Diadem began. Allied forces successfully broke through the line. On June 4, Rome was liberated and Alton entered the city with the 3rd Infantry Division. On May 26, 1944, the Medal of Honor was officially awarded to Alton. Official citation read he held an exposed null position, enemy bullets. Whistled within inches, under suppressive fire he crawled 15 yards to secure rifle clips from a fallen comrade. Alone he held off enemy attacks for over 2 hours successfully, shattering the enemy's counterattack attempt. At this time Alton was only 20 years old and had experienced 5 months of baptism by fire. This was the first and only time in his military career that he received a commendation. After the award ceremony, Alton was sent back to the United States to participate in a war bond tour, recounting his combat experiences to call on the public to buy war bonds. This was standard procedure for Medal of Honor recipients at the time. Did the U.S. Army Infantry Field Manual change? Officially no, the Field Manual still taught soldiers use cover, keep a low profile, but the infantry school at Fort Benning listed Alton's deeds as a case study, how to adapt to local conditions, turn disadvantages into advantages, trade exposure for field of view. Field of view is battlefield control, when the command system is paralyzed. Take the initiative to control the situation. This case conveyed a core idea. The manual is a guide, not an law. Terrain and battlefield situation always override the book. Although Alton's decision violated the manual, it was a stroke of genius for that open terrain. From 1945 to 2008, after the war ended, Alton returned to Pennsylvania. He first worked as a truck driver, then became a supervisor for an asphalt paving crew. He always stayed out of the public eye and rarely mentioned the war. He married, had children, and passed on the skills he learned in hunting, fishing, and shooting to his children, and his character was quiet and humble. Afraid he often said was, "I just did what I had to do." Local veterans all knew him and knew he was a Medal of Honor recipient, but Alton never boasted of his achievements, unless someone asked. Actively, he never mentioned the past. On June 9, 2008, Alton Warren passed away at the age of 84. He was buried with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery. The gravestone is simple and plain, engraved only with his name, rank, PFC, and the words Medal of Honor. No mention of the 60 Germans, no mention of the 2 hours on that knoll, in that open field. Near Latina, an inconspicuous knoll still stands today. No more than 2 to 3 meters high, completely unremarkable. On February 1, 1944, this knoll was the most dangerous place within 10 square 20-year-old Alton Warren. The deer hunter from Spring Mount, Pennsylvania, climbed this knoll. He lay in wait, waited, and fired. Just like climbing it to hunt, he survived and saved 30 immobilized comrades. His logic was simple and pure. I will be the deer and let them become the hunters. The infantry field manual said, seek cover. Alton said, seize the high ground, look out over the battlefield, control the whole picture. If Alton's story moved you, please like and support to let more people know about this forgotten history. Subscribe and turn on notifications. We push unknown historical stories daily. You are welcome to leave a message in the comment section telling us where you are from and sharing if your family had relatives who participated in WWII. Thank you for watching. Alton deserves to be remembered. These men gave everything for the freedom of future generations, and by watching, liking, and sharing, you are keeping their memory alive lest we forget.